Welcome to Great Books, Big Ideas, and I'm here to talk about American Pastoral by Philip Roth. This was published by Vintage Books in 1997. It was the winner of the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in that year. And I finished this about a week ago, and I've been thinking a lot about it. So let's get into a brief book review and see whether this baby's worth reading. All right, let's break down the plot to the extent that there is a plot in this novel. It really consists of different parts, 3 parts, and it's using the sort of Adam and Eve, Paradise Lost, the pastoral ideal, that kind of framework for its structure. Part 1 is called Paradise Remembered. Part 2 is called The Fall. And Part 3 is called Paradise Lost. There's a very inventive narrative strategy used here by Philip Roth, and I'll try to explain it. It gets a little complicated, but we'll do our best. So anyway, this is a form of frame narrative. So our narrator is Philip Roth's alter ego, Nathan Zuckerman, who appears in many of his novels. And the protagonist of American Pastoral is a man by the name of Seymour Irving Levoff. And he was the golden boy of Newark, New Jersey, this Jewish kid who Nathan Zuckerman knew, who he looked up to. And the Swede is his nickname, Seymour's nickname. And he was a star athlete in high school, just a real mensch, just a good guy. Everyone kind of liked him and rooted for him. He had mythic status. So this is going to be a story that Nathan Zuckerman tells, recreating the life of Seymour, the Swede, Levoff. Zuckerman in Part 1, Paradise Remembered, we're really beginning like at the end of the storyline, and this is sort of setting up why he writes the book in the first place. So Zuckerman attends his, I think it's his 45th class reunion in Newark, New Jersey, and he meets Jerry Levoff, the brother of Seymour, the Swede. And Jerry tells him that the Swede has died not long ago, and he brings up the event that ruined his charmed life. And I want to quote from page 68 in my edition, my paperback edition, which I found in a little free library. Okay, so this is from a passage where Jerry is talking to Nathan Zuckerman. And I'll just cut into the middle of a paragraph towards the end. He got the meaning for his life some other way. Jerry's talking about his brother, Seymour. I don't mean he was simple. Some people thought he was simple because all his life he was so kind. But Seymour was never that simple. Simple is never that simple. Still, the self-questioning did take some time to reach him. And if there's anything worse than self-questioning coming too early in life, it's self-questioning coming too late. His life was blown up by that bomb. The real victim of that bombing was him. And here, there will be spoilers in this book review, but Philip Roth is basically spoiling it right up front here. You're getting at the central event that destroyed Seymour's life, this bombing. Zuckerman says, "What bomb?" Jerry says, "Little Mary's darling bomb." I don't know what Mary's darling bomb is. Meredith Levoff, Seymour's daughter. The Rimrock bomber was Seymour's daughter. The high school kid who blew up the post office and killed the doctor. The kid who stopped the war in Vietnam by blowing up somebody out mailing a letter at 5 a.m. A doctor on his way to the hospital. Charming child. he said in a voice that was all contempt and still didn't seem to contain the load of contempt and hatred that he felt. Brought the war home to Lyndon Johnson by blowing up the post office and the general store. Place is so small, the post office is in the general store. Just a window at the back of the general store and a couple rows of those boxes with the locks, and that's the whole post office. Get your stamps right in there with the Rinso and the Lifebuoy and the Lux. Quaint Americana. Seymour was into quaint Americana, but the kid wasn't. He took the kid out of real time and she put him right back in. My brother thought he could take his family out of human confusion and into old Rimrock, and she put them right back in. Somehow, she plants a bomb back behind the post office window, and when it goes off, it takes out the general store too, and takes out the guy, the doctor, who's just stopping by the collection box to drop off his mail. Goodbye, Americano. Hello, real time. And that's the central event that ruins Seymour's life. And then, so basically, in terms of the storyline here, you're getting the end of the story up front. So if you are somewhat disgruntled at the ending of the novel, like I was, and I'll talk more about this shortly, I would point you back to this part of the book to get some of your questions answered. This is one of the problems with the fact that I read this book over a long stretch of time. So I started it as an ebook, didn't finish it. I only got up to maybe page 100 or something. And then when I found, and then I just didn't read it for a while. And then when I found this in a little free library, I decided to pick it up again and pick up where I left off. But there were a lot of details from the beginning that I just forgot because it had been more than a year ago. So anyway, we find out that after all this, after the end of the novel, that the Swede, he divorced his wife, he remarried, had 2 more kids, but he never got over this tragedy with his daughter, Mary. And we do find out that he kept seeing her, but that now she is dead. And anyway, that kind of wraps up some of the loose ends that I had questions about at the end of the book. But anyway, this is all by way of setting up a frame narrative. So what Zuckerman's going to do now is tell the Swede's story. He's going to recreate the life of this man and his wife and their family and his business and what was going on in 1968 when Mary decided to commit this act of terrorism and went into hiding for a long time. That is the frame narrative here. So you always have to keep in mind that the book is being narrated by Zuckerman, who is a character. You're seeing it through that lens. Anyway, part 2 is called The Fall. And in this part, the narrator introduces us to the Swede. He's this legendary hero of Nathan Zuckerman's childhood, growing up in Newark, New Jersey. And the Swede seems to have it all. He has a charmed life. He marries Dawn Dwyer, an Irish Catholic girl who happened to be Miss New Jersey. And they have a daughter, Meredith, Mary Levoff. The Swede, inherits his family's glove factory in Newark, New Jersey. It's a thriving business that treats its employees with respect, real traditional kind of factory. And you learn a lot about this in the book. Roth goes into great detail. I learned a lot about glove making, more than maybe I wanted to know. But anyway, the Swede builds this perfect life for himself and his family, moves them to Old Rimrock in rural North Jersey. And this section of the book really depicts their idyllic American dream pastoral life. They've made it, but this is a life that will soon be rent asunder. And Mary, who was once a nice, shy little girl who had a stutter, becomes a troubled, radicalized teenager in the late 1960s. She's swept up in the turmoil of the civil rights movement protests and the Vietnam War, anti-war protests. And then, as we found out through Jerry, she bombs the local post office in Old Rimrock, which killed a man who happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. And she then goes into hiding, and this shatters the Swede's life. He is consumed by grief, by guilt, by the search for his fugitive daughter, and it really hurts Dawn too, but it's very much the Swede's book. So eventually the Swede learns that Mary has joined an extremist group, not unlike the Weather Underground, and this is not the only bombing that she committed. More on that in a little bit. That's not really revealed till a little bit later in the book. But by the end of part 2, we see that the Swede is really broken by this, and he doesn't have any answers. Part 3, probably my favorite part of the novel, Paradise Lost. Here we witness the Swede's life unraveling. Dawn suffers a nervous breakdown. She has an affair with a local architect friend. And this is all in the context of like what is happening to Newark as a city after the riots in the 60s. And there's a lot of white flight. Businesses are closing. And it's just everything's going downhill. And then the key hey Hawk, the key part to this is the key scene is where we have there's a lot of weird stuff that happens in this part, which I won't go into, but eventually the Swede finds Mary, and she is living in squalor in bombed out Newark, New Jersey, not too far away from where the glove factory is, in fact. But the encounter between the Swede and Mary is really, to me, the central, the climax of the book, and it's very tragic. She has changed irrevocably. She has adopted the strict practices of Jainism, the ancient Indian religion, and renounced basically everything in life and rejected everything her family stands for. And she shows no remorse for her terroristic acts. This conversation between the Swede and his daughter is bitter, and it's there's so much misunderstanding between them. It's very painful to read. I'm going to share you a passage shortly from that. But in this section, the Swede realizes that the American dream he believed in was a hollow fantasy, and that he can never recover this idealism and the idyllic past that he used to experience. And then the novel concludes with a dinner party scene, which I'll get into in just a minute. But let me read you from the scene with between the Swede and Mary. It goes on and on and on, but I was riveted by this section of the novel. It was some of the best writing in the book. So remember, Nathan Zuckerman's narrating this story, and he's very sympathetic to the Swede. So he focalizes the narration really through that lens. We have a double lens here. Here's a little passage, and I might hop around a little bit, but just to give you the sense of like the torture that's going through him as he's sitting there with his daughter, who is really emaciated. She's wearing a veil. She's living in squalor, without electricity, and this place is like just as worst as you can imagine it, he's been longing to find her, and he discovers that she's been in Newark at least for I think the last 6 months or so, and it's just the pain is just like all through these pages. Her father was no longer wondering at what point he had lost control over her life, no longer thinking that everything he had ever done had been futile and that she was in the power of something demented. He was thinking instead that Mary Stoltz was not his daughter, for the simple reason that his daughter could not have absorbed so much pain. She was a kid from Old Rimrock, a privileged kid from paradise. She could not have worked potato fields and slept under bridges and for 5 years gone about in terror of arrest. She could never have slept with the blind woman and her dog. Indianapolis, Chicago, Portland, Idaho, Kentucky, Maryland, Florida. Never could Mary have lived alone in all those places, an isolated vagabond washing dishes and hiding out from the police and befriending the destitute on park benches. And never would she have wound up in Newark. No, living for 6 months, 10 minutes away, walking to the Ironbound through that underpass, wearing that veil and walking all alone every morning and every night, past all those derelicts and through all that filth. No, the story was a lie, its purpose to destroy their villain, who was him. The story was a caricature, a sensational caricature, and she was an actress. This girl was a professional, hired and charged with tormenting him because he was everything they were not. They wanted to kill him off with the story of a pariah exiled in the very country where her family had triumphantly rooted itself in every possible way, and so he refused to be convinced by anything she had said. He thought, the rape, the bombs, a sitting duck for every madman, that was more than hardship. That was hell. Mary couldn't survive any of it. She could not have survived killing 4 people. She could not have murdered in cold blood and survived. And it comes out that she had, after she did this first bombing, she went to the West Coast and did more bombings. Of course, this all could have happened to her. Things happen like this every day, all over the face of the earth. He had no idea how people behaved. You're not my daughter. You are not Mary. She says, if you wish to believe that I am not, that may be just as well. That may be for the best. Why don't you ask me about your mother, Meredith? Should I ask you, where was your mother born? What is her maiden name? What is her father's name? I don't want to talk about my mother. Because you know nothing about her, or about me, or about the person you pretend to be. Tell me about the house at the shore. Tell me the name of your first grade teacher. Who was your second grade teacher? Tell me why you are pretending to be my daughter. If I answer the questions, you will suffer even more. I don't know how much suffering you want. Oh, don't worry about my suffering, young lady. Just answer the questions. Why are you pretending to be my daughter? Who are you? Who is Rita Cohen? She's a character that figures prominently, possible ally of Mary, but also this like a weird character who shakes down the Swede for money. What are you two up to? Where is my daughter? I will turn this matter over to the police unless you tell me now what is going on here and where my daughter is. Nothing I'm doing is actionable, Daddy. The awful legalism, not only the awful Jainism, but this shit too. No, he said, now it isn't. Now it's just horrible. What about what you did do? I killed 4 people, she replied, as innocently as she might once have told him, I baked Toll House cookies this afternoon. No, he shouted. The Jainism, the legalism, the egregious innocence, all of it, desperation, all of it to distance herself from the 4 who are dead. This will not do. You are not an Algerian woman. You are not from Algeria, and you are not from India. You are an American girl from Old Rimrock, New Jersey. A very, very screwed up American girl. 4 people. No. And now he refused to believe it. Now it was he for whom the guilt made no sense and could not be. She had been much too blessed for this to be true. So had he. He could never father a child who killed 4 people. Everything life had provided her, everything life offered her, everything life demanded of her, everything that had happened to her from the day she was born made that impossible. Killing people, it was not one of their problems. Mercifully, life had omitted that from their lives. Killing people was as far as you could get from all that had been given to the Levovs to do. No, she was not. She could not be his. If you are so big on not lying or taking anything small or great, all that crap, Mary, completely meaningless crap, I beg you to tell me the truth. She says, the truth is simple. Here is the truth. You must be done with craving and selfhood. Mary, he cried, Mary, Mary, and the unbridled, unchecked in him, powerless not to attack, with all his manly brawn, he fell upon her huddled there on the grimy pallet. It isn't you. You could not have done it. She put up no resistance as he tore from her face the veil cut from the end of a stocking. Where the heel should be was her chin. Nothing is more fetid than something where your foot has been, and she puts her mouth up against it. We loved her, she loved us, and as a result, she wears her face in a stocking. Now speak, he commanded her. And it goes on. So you can just see how intense the writing here is. You really feel for the Swede, and this scene does not end well. It just ends in disconnection, and despair. So anyway, that's just this little snippet of that. And then there's a scene not long after that where really in desperation, he has really nowhere to turn. The Swede telephones his brother, Jerry, who is like a doctor in Florida. And the Jerry really lets him have it here. So this is a long conversation. I can't quote it all, but just to give you a sense for how this was really painful to read too, where you're looking for support from a family member and they just take that opportunity to like throw the dagger into your rib cage. So this is mostly Jerry talking here. He says, we'll start the conversation. We're in the middle of the conversation, but Seymour says, please, not now. Don't tear me down. Don't undermine me. I love my daughter. I never loved anything more in the world. And Jerry says, as a thing. What? What is that? As a thing. You loved her as a fucking thing, the way you love your wife. Oh, if someday you could become conscious of why you are doing what you are doing. Do you know why? Do you have any idea? Because you're afraid of creating a bad scene. You're afraid of letting the beast out of the bag. What are you talking about? What beast? What beast? No, he is not expecting perfect consolation, but this attack Why is he launching this attack without even the pretext of consoling? Why? When he has just explained to Jerry how everything has turned not thousands and thousands of times worse, has turned out thousands and thousands of times worse than the worst they'd expected. This is Jerry. What are you? Do you know? What you are is you're always trying to smooth everything over. What you are is always trying to be moderate. What you are is never telling the truth if you think it's going to hurt somebody's feelings. What you are is you're always compromising. What you are is always complacent. What you are is always trying to find the bright side of things. The one with the manners, the one who abides everything patiently, the one with the ultimate decorum, the boy who never breaks the code. Whatever society dictates, you do. Decorum. Decorum is what you spit in the face of. Well, your daughter spit in it for you, didn't she? For people, quite a critique she has made of decorum. If he hangs up, he will be alone in the hallway behind the man who is waiting, behind the man who is down on the stairs, tearing at Mary. He will be seeing everything he does not want to see, knowing everything he cannot stand to know. He cannot, at their imagining the rest of that story. If he hangs up, he will never know what Jerry has to say after he says all this stuff that he, for some reason, wants to say about the beast. What beast? All his relations with people are like this. It isn't an attack on me. It is Jerry. Nobody can control him. He was born like this. I knew that before I called him. I've known it all my life. We do not live the same way. A brother who isn't a brother. I panicked. I am in a panic. This is panic. I called the worst person to call in the world. This is a guy who wields a knife for a living, remedies what is ailing with a knife, cuts out what is rotting with a knife. I am on the ropes. I am dealing with something that nobody can deal with, and for him, it's business as usual. He just keeps coming at me with his knife. I'm not the renegade, the Swede says. I'm not the renegade. You are. No, you're not the renegade. You're the one who does everything right. I don't follow this. You say that like an insult. Angrily, he says, what the hell is wrong with doing things right? Nothing. Nothing, except that's what your daughter has been blasting away at her life all her life. You don't reveal yourself to people, Seymour. You keep yourself a secret. Nobody knows what you are. You certainly never let her know who you are. That's what she's been blasting away at, that facade. All your fucking norms. Take a good look at what she did to your norms. I don't know what you want from me. You've always been too smart for me. Is this your response? Is this it? You win the trophy. You always made the right move. You're loved by everybody. You marry Miss New Jersey, for God's sake. That's thinking for you. Why did you marry her? For the appearance. Why do you do everything for the appearance? I loved her. I opposed my own father. I loved her so much. Jerry is laughing. Is that what you believe? You really think that you stood up to him? You married her because you couldn't get out of it. Dad raked her over the coals in his office and you sat there and didn't say shit. Well, isn't that true? My daughter is in that room, Jerry. What is this all about? And it goes on from there. So you can see, whoo, wow. So, well, you can't choose your family, can you? But anyway, that shows you some of the intensity of the writing that Philip Roth is capable of in this novel. Let me talk a little bit about the final episode in the book, which is a dinner party scene where we get some reveals. So there'll be some mild spoilers here, but and I'll talk a little bit about my reaction to the ending, which was mixed. So a lot happens in this episode. It's a dinner party scene. Seymour's father is there. There's other characters. There's the speech therapist that worked with Mary, and you find out a lot of things here. So a couple discoveries that are worth mentioning are that he sees his wife, Dawn, being dry humped by the architect friend in the kitchen. So now he knows that they are having an affair. We also discover that the Swede, after Mary disappeared and Dawn was in bad straits, I think she was hospitalized for a while, he had this fling with the speech therapist, who's also at this dinner party. And he now finds out that the speech therapist harbored Mary in the initial days after the bombing in Old Rimrock, and he lashes out at her. There's a confrontation scene when they have some time alone together in this one room. And just in general, and then there's some other crazy stuff that happens, and you actually get very confused at what's happening, because the book, there's a lot of stream of consciousness in this novel, and because this is being reimagined by Nathan Zuckerman, he seems to be just making things up. So there's like a hallucinatory quality to some of the scenes that happen in this final episode. Things that you think are happening aren't really happening. So that's a lot to sort through. But the basic gist is pretty clear, that Seymour realizes that this life he's been living is all really like a facade, and that underneath this is the roiling truth of things, and it's all coming out. And now we know, when we go back to the beginning of the book, and we sort of find more of that backstory, that exposition, we realize that this marriage would break up, and that he would remarry and have 2 other children, and never get over this stuff with Mary. But anyway, you're really left on the hook at the literal end of the book. And initially, I really wanted to know more about what happened, because it's what's at issue. He has just recently discovered that his daughter's been hiding out in Newark for 6 months. But what happens next? Is she going to be dimed out? This is sort of creeping out, so now the speech therapist knows, and other people know, like Jerry knows, and it's like, what's going to happen to Mary? Like, I wanted some of those strings to be tied up, and Roth really refuses to do that at the end of the book, and that was a bit frustrating. And then I realized that some of this was covered up front in the book. So that sent me back to those early pages where Roth is sort of setting up the whole frame of things. So the more I think about it, the ending, which I initially kind of hated, it just sort of stopped in like at the end. I can read you the very, very end, because it's kind of the very last sentence is pretty powerful here. Yes, the breach had been pounded in their fortification, even out here in secure Old Rimrock, and now that it was opened, it would not be closed again. They'll never recover. Everything is against them, everyone and everything that does not like their life. All the voices from without, condemning and rejecting their life. And what is wrong with their life? What on earth is less reprehensible than the life of the Levovs? That's a loaded question. You're not quite sure how to take it. Is he being ironic there? Is he being sincere? I think it's more that Zuckerman, the narrator, is being sincere there in saying, he really feels there's nothing less reprehensible than them. Like, that you can't be less reprehensible. Like, these were good people. They were trying to do the right thing. And then this awful outcome happened. We don't understand how these things happen. But that there's ambiguity there for sure, and that I like ambiguity in art. So anyway, I think I'm more okay with the ending than I initially thought I was. I kept thinking about the book after I finished it. It was an affecting book. So let me talk about some major themes and then we'll wrap this up. Clearly, this is a book about the American dream, the suburban pastoral ideal. It's a book about assimilation because these are Jewish characters, with the exception of Dawn, who's Irish Catholic, but it applies to her too. Like these immigrant populations who are assimilating into American society, and that's wrapped up with the American dream. And by all appearances, emphasis on appearances, they've made it. Like they did assimilate. They have financial success, safe, secure, beautiful property, looked up to. Things are going great for them. They're widely liked people. And then this awful thing happened with the daughter. That things were never the same after that. Another major theme is the generation gap and the sort of the family drama of how parents and children so often just don't understand each other, and the child gets like swept up in the tide of the times of the 60s, which very fraught period of time, and is then committing acts that were just inconceivable, that the Swede just can't imagine his daughter being capable of doing these things that she did. So the book seems to also be about the 60s, the late 60s, what was happening in the society and culture, and like the rifts that it was causing. This old world, the older generation, is now like being thrown out by the wayside, and there's just a total lack of understanding between the newer and the older generations. And it's also about just socioeconomically what was happening to North Jersey, to Newark, which really hasn't recovered from what happened in the late 60s, like so many cities in America. It experienced riots, it experienced white flight, urban decay, eroding tax base, businesses left, closed down, the economy changed, and this whole innocence that the Levovs stood for in the 40s and the 50s is now basically gone. It's just decimated. So things are not what they appear to be from the outside. That is also a theme that's touched on there at the end of the book. I think it's a theme that you see again and again throughout the book. In the final analysis, I'll just talk a little bit about some of the strengths and weaknesses that I see in American Pastoral. I really thought Roth did a great job with the characterizations, especially of Seymour. This is rich, deep characterization. He also did a pretty decent job with Dawn, much to my surprise. But she is given a lot of pages in here too. And at least I think Roth is attempting to understand this female character. Weaknesses, I'm not totally convinced about Mary's character. I really wanted to understand her motivations a lot more. Now, you do get a lot of details sprinkled through, so you could do your own detective work. And I think it might not be the novel it is if he had given us more of Mary's motivations, because this narrator, Zuckerman, is like so close to the Swede they're really, there's a lot of affinity between them. He's very sympathetic towards him, and the Swede just doesn't get it. Like, this is part of his character. He just can't fathom what his daughter has turned into. So to share what Mary, to give her more of a well-rounded view in the characterization might sort of be at odds with the way he's set up the novel, but at the same time, I feel like the perspective was sort of loaded against Mary, and I wanted to hear her speak for herself a little bit more, but I don't know. It is what it is. Anyway, the other thing I would say is, as I was reflecting on the novel after I finished it, I realized there's another book that this reminds me of. And that book, I'll put it in a screenshot here, is Eat the Document by Dana Spiotta, a book I recommend. And that is a book that was published a few years after this one. And in that novel, it's also about a bombing that occurred as an act of, protest terrorism. And in this book, a couple, participate in that bombing, and they didn't mean to kill anyone, but someone inadvertently got killed. And they then split ways and go live independent fugitive lives. So the whole book is about those points of view, and you find out a lot about their guilt, how they're dealing with the consequences of their actions as they live in hiding and assume new identities and things of that nature. So I kind of wanted Roth to sort of borrow some of that from Dana Spiotta, and invest his book with a little bit more of that picture. But it would have been a different kind of novel. I acknowledge that. So anyway, in conclusion, this is a sobering book that levels its gaze at the myth of the American dream. But it's also sad, because I really think certainly Zuckerman, and probably Roth behind Zuckerman pulling the strings, they like this American dream. They want that to be reality, and alas, it didn't turn out that way. But it's very honest in its portrayal of, the ethics of protests and resistance, and sort of the violence that people get swept up into. The tragedy also of trying to live the right way, and then reality just spitting in your face, and you're suffering in spite of all the good that you tried to do in the world. This was a good read. It won me over, and it's a lot more artfully assembled than I thought it was at first. It's like Roth is sort of a sneaky postmodernist. He sneaks it in through the back door. It reads like realistic fiction, but it's really a different kettle of fish. And it's a non-linear narrative, and it just sort of spins and circles and recycles and repeats. And with every sort of cycle, you get a little bit more, and it enriches the picture. And then, like I said, towards the end, it gets stream of consciousness, and it gets hallucinatory at times. I, in retrospect, like that. I thought it was pretty well done, and I give him points for the attempt on that. I also give him points for the attempt to write some female characters with depth. Thinking of his portrayal of Dawn, although some of the other women in the book do not fare well. There's a misogynist taint there, And I don't know, I suspect this is a little bit of a Roth thing. And I think it's clear that he understands men better than women. And this is a book about masculinity, masculine identity, and what happens when this tragedy like sort of strikes and basically makes you question who you are, what you're all about, the path that you led in life. And it's tough because you cannot control ultimately what your children do. Like, they are their own agents in life, and it can be very painful for some parents when they see how their kids turned out, and but there is another side of that story too. Anyway, have you read American Pastoral? What do you think? Leave a review in the comments. And if you have any other Philip Roth book recommendations, I'm all ears. Leave a comment. Thanks for watching. If you like content like this, I hope you'll become a subscriber and like the video. It helps the algorithm, and it just makes me feel a little nicer. Anyway, be seeing you. Bye-bye. That's American Pastoral. Peace out.